Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. Joined this week by my guy, John Stargarian. You guys can follow him at MMA Fox. And we are here propping you up for the last UFC event of the year, UFC Vegas 45, headlined by a heavyweight banger between Derek Lewis and Chris Daukaus. Really looking forward to seeing how that one goes out. And a couple other great fights sprinkled out throughout the card, John. Is there anything else that really sticks out to you in terms of not even from a betting perspective, but more so from an entertainment perspective? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad card. It's kind of weird because name value is somewhat light across it, but a couple interesting fights. I think Assuncao Simone is pretty fascinating fight just because we haven't seen Rafael since he got knocked out, and a couple years ago this would have been, I don't think anybody would have looked forward to this, and now it's like, well, Ricky's on the rise, and Assuncao maybe has one fight out the door, so I'm pretty excited for that. Pretty excited for Gamrot and CDF. I don't know how you can't be for that one.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of good fights, and yeah, I'm actually absolutely excited for Assuncao Simone as well. Almost a passing of the torch type of fight if Assuncao obviously takes the L that tomorrow night, but looking forward to it. Tomorrow, I was supposed to be going to a regional MMA show up here in Ontario, but the goddamn government put the restrictions out, Omicron, Omarion, whatever the fuck you want to call it, shutting shit down. For the Raptors games, they have them down to 50% capacity, but apparently for this MMA show, the venue just didn't want to do it. So they fucking just pulled the plug this morning. All the fighters made weight. Everything was looking good, and then they just pulled the show. So I won't be going to the MMA event tomorrow, but I still have a hotel booked in Niagara Falls. So I'm still going to the fucking hotel, and I'm still gonna have myself a good time. So I probably won't be watching the card live. Just gonna go enjoy some Niagara Falls and maybe link up with some of the guys down there that are there for the fights anyway, and probably get fucked up. So yeah, nice. Screw this this COVID thing and robbing us of some more live face punching, but it is what it is. Hopefully that they can bounce back shortly.
Do we know, are they going to be doing live events next year other than pay-per-views, or is it just back in Vegas for another year? Do we know yet?
They already have something booked for Ohio, don't they? Like they have a fight night booked for Ohio. They're talking about going to Brazil in May. There's supposedly a show in London in March, but who knows if this thing keeps spiking and if they start changing everything. But I think we'll see for the first 6 months or so. I still think we'll see shows coming out of the Apex, man. I think they were so lucky in the timing of building the Apex too, right? Like they built it like a year or two before the fucking COVID hit, and now they got a base.
The thing is, I'm ready to get out of the Apex, man. Like I need prospects that are favorites choking under the lights and under the crowd here. I don't need silent building where they can hear their quarters,
Oh my god, dude, I like that angle, man. That's a damn good angle. One thing I'll say though, it's kind of shitty that a lot of guys are having these spectacular fights in front of almost nobody, and they don't really get to reign themselves with the cheers and the crowd and all that. The one fight that I was thinking about, especially when taping this card, was CDF against Gillespie, man. Imagine fucking the crowd going nuts for those reversals and everything, man. That would have been crazy.
I can't wait to get back to shows. I can't wait to have like a more normal semblance of like big cage every week instead of me having to calculate, how big of a factor is the fucking cage having on the fight,
Yeah.
But who knows? If we keep it in Apex next year, maybe I can convince the wife to let me go out to Vegas and meet up with you for one of these cards.
Let's fucking go. Shout out to my guy Matthew Rauch here saying Houston for Izzy and Rob. I believe that's going to be in February as well. So as of right now, they're still going as business as normal with Florida, Arizona, and I believe Texas, and obviously Nevada as well. So we'll see how that plays out. All right. We're here to break down UFC Vegas 45. Very much looking forward to this card. Obviously the last one of the year, unless you want to be an MMA diehard and say Risen is the last card of the year. But do you also shout out to the guy that actually requested that we put up Risen on the tape index. I ain't got time for that right now, dog. Like I don't have any database on any of these fighters, and there's so many fights, so much unknown. So won't have the time to put that up. I apologize, but we already have 4 events up for the UFC, and I'm looking to put up that 5th one as well. So you guys will have a ton of UFC to chew on the tape index. Unfortunately, no Risen. I apologize. All right. First fight of the night, John. Let's get into this here. We got Matt Sayles going up against Jourdain Leavitt. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 130 now for Jourdain Leavitt, plus 110 for Matt Sayles. I put out a tweet that I didn't expect to get as much traffic as it did. I said that God be with anybody that puts money on this Jourdain Leavitt fight. And I was saying it more so from a money line perspective, because I think it's a crapshoot in that aspect, right? Very binary fight to break down. You want Matt Sayles to keep this fight on the feet, use his superior striking. Jourdain Leavitt, the monkey god, wants to drag this fight to the ground, whether it's an Imanari roll or whatever the hell he tries to do, wants to drag this fight to the ground because that's where he's going to have success. No matter where these guys fight, though, if it's in that person's advantage, the striking or the grappling, I think a finish is quite live here. I actually personally took a shot myself now, 2 units at minus 118, or sorry, 1.2 units at minus 118 on the under 2.5 here, because I think Sayles could start this guy if he looks anywhere close to what he used to look like before his long layoff. I think he's been off for almost 2 years now. Apparently, he got up to 250 pounds and then came back down. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like on the scales this morning. But if he looks anything near what he used to, he should be able to start Jourdain Leavitt here. I am not a Jourdain Leavitt believer at all. Faded him last time with Poyas. Happy to cash on that. I'm expecting to kind of fade him here with the under, hoping that he gets knocked out, but at least have that safety net in case he does get Sayles to the ground and he can wrap him up in a pretzel himself. So violence is kind of my approach here. I'm thinking Sayles KO or Jourdain Leavitt sub. I believe the Sayles KO number wasn't that bad, actually. Sayles KO plus 350, not too shabby, plus 400, depending on the places that you're looking at. Leave it by sub plus 180, as you'd expect, but the under 2.5 around minus 1. Well, it's up to minus 140, minus 150 now. I still don't mind that, man. Both these guys combined, well, not even combined, both of them, 6 out of their 8 fights, finishing inside the distance. I like it. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, this first of all, let me just start with saying you called him the monkey god. The monkey god is Jared motherfucking Brooks, the goat who beat
Monkey King, right?
The God, Monkey King.
Damn,
do not compare Jourdain Leavitt to Jared Brooks.
Bad. No disrespect, Jared Brooks. God damn.
Yeah, this is kind of like right what I was saying in the beginning, right? Because in a big cage, I actually would not really like the under that much, just because Leavitt's going to do whatever he can to stay out of the pocket, in this fight. But in the small cage, he's going to kind of have to either, engage him one way or another in the grappling or the striking. And with that in mind, I kind of do like the under a bit here. For me, I think the money line's more or less right. I'm not a Leavitt guy at all, to be honest. Like, I've been actively looking to fade him left and right. But what you can say about him is he knows he can't strike. He knows what he needs to do is go in there and attempt takedowns. If this goes 3 rounds, I'd expect him to attempt 10 to 15 takedowns. Like, he's not the kind of guy who's going to get discouraged and strike. He knows he's fucked if that happens. So I expect him to try to relentlessly get takedowns. And if he gets them, I think Matt Sayles is tragically awful on the mat, to be honest. Look, I can't put too much stock in the Mitchell fight because the Mitchell fight, Mitchell's an excellent grappler.
He's an anomaly almost, right?
Yeah.
Fights.
Yeah, and I went on Magic Show last night, and he made a decent point about it, where he was like, no one really attempts twisters, so if you haven't really drilled that in the gym, it's kind of like a tricky thing to kind of try to deal with. But if that was the only fight I could see having, maybe giving Sayles a break. The problem is I've seen his back taken by strikers regionally. I saw Kyle Nelson 10-8 him and almost finish him and back mount him. Kyle Nelson is not much of a grappler, in my opinion.
Oh, I know of Kyle Nelson.
yeah. Canadian boy.
He fought on one of the shows I used to run, but yeah, hilarious.
Right. So it's like if Leavitt gets takedowns, I do think he can dominate Sayles on the mat here, unless Sayles has made improvements. And he could have, but again, knowing that he had a major injury and he blew up like that, I don't know how much grappling he's really trained in that time off. So I do think if Leavitt gets takedowns, he's got a pretty good shot to dominate this fight and win it. And because that's the case, it's hard for me to not favor a guy who I know is going to relentlessly attempt takedowns and should have a big edge on the mat. But I do think Sayles has pretty good first-level takedown defense, and I don't think Leavitt's the best wrestler. And if Leavitt does find himself trading in the pocket, things are going to go south in a hurry. So I'm not really passionate about a money line, but I do like the under here. If you want to play Sayles KO, I don't think that's bad. But, yeah, I think the under is probably the best way to play it, or doesn't go.
Love it. I love it. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Dontel Mays versus Josh Parisian. The slop fest continues. Minus 185 on Dontel Mays, plus 170 or plus 160, I should say, on Josh Parisian. Pretty binary fight to break down, right? Dontel Mays, the more mobile fighter, likes to stick and move a little bit, can mix it up a little bit better than Josh Parisian. Parisian likes to throw spinning wild shit at times. kind of slowish, plods forward, just tries to bully his opponents in a sense, right? Like with the striking, just tries to be just imposing on his opponents. But I don't think that Dontel Mays will get sucked into that. I do think that we'll see, even with a smaller cager, he should be able to stick and move pretty well. Even if he wants to, I think he can engage in the clinch and have some success there. Maybe even land a takedown or two to release away the judges on his side. But I think the secret's out on Josh Parisian fights, man. Bet the over 1.5, bet the fight goes to decision, and you're probably going to get some decent value on it. However, we got the over 1.5 at -200, which is hilarious for a heavyweight fight. But that's how these guys fight, man. They don't really fight with that crazy urgency to try to get a knockout earlier in their fights. I like the fight goes to decision here, +105. And in terms of picking a side, man, I think Mays is the side here. It's very difficult to make a case for Josh Parisian, who, came out of the Contender Series with a little bit of hype in a sense, right? I think he was shocked pretty heavily in his first fight in the UFC. But now people are starting to see what he really is about, and he's really not that good of a fighter, in my opinion. Dontel Mays by decision +200. I'd want a better line there, honestly, just to be able to pull the trigger here. At the end of the day, both of these guys are below average heavyweights, and to pay -200 on a guy like Mays, I'd rather take the prop than anything. Yeah. But the overs and the fight goes to decision are probably the spots here, prop wise. What are you thinking?
Yeah, this is one of those fights where it's like before I taped it, I was like, oh my God, Dontel Mays is -200. Like, I'm definitely going to fade him. Parisian has good volume. But then you go and you watch Parisian fight, and it's like, dude is so bad, man. Like he stops punches with his face, which, maybe you can get by with at like 35 or 45, if you're not fighting the highest level guys. Heavyweight, it's not really something that can last. And that's kind of, so I don't like Dontel Mays as a fighter, but I do think he has some skills. My problem with Mays is it's just like, I don't think he knows how to use those skills very well. Like every now and then, like he'll throw a jab or he'll do like a pull counter, and it's like, oh, that was pretty cool. But then it's like 3 or 4 minutes before he does anything that really like gets your attention. So, I mean, looking at this fight, I guess, Mays' decision and goes the distance seem okay. But like I said, Parisian does stop punches with his face. And it's like, I know Mays hasn't classically been a huge hitter, but you're playing a dangerous game when you fight like Josh Parisian does at heavyweight, especially with a guy as big as Mays does. So it's like, I do think if you forced me to make a play here, Parisian by decision, fight goes the distance would be the plays that, or not Parisian by decision, sorry, Mays by the decision, fight goes the distance.
The brakes to John. Jesus. I get it. Yeah, continue.
To be honest, if it was a more reliable fighter to do things than Dontel Mays, I'd actually play the chalk because I do think he's much more skilled than Parisian is. The problem is it's the classic Dontel Mays doesn't do a lot and Parisian is a doer of things. So I can't really back a -200 there with that being the dynamic. But yeah, I don't feel passionate about anything here. Like if you really want to DJ and play Mays' decision, but I have this feeling that Parisian's going to get put out cold in one of the next couple fights. It's impossible to fight that way at heavyweight and not get iced eventually.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Shout out to my guy Tajik Bay for the $5 donation there. There'll be so much more money to give to the community this week. I'm excited. Good luck. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people saying they have utter confidence in this card, and I kind of feel the same. I just don't feel strongly enough about one specific play to make a lock of the night play. So there's actually no lock of the night play for this weekend. However, I have 7 or 8 bets I'm going to be pulling the trigger on here that I'm looking forward to. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Macy Chiasson taking on Raquel Pennington, +145 for Chiasson, -165 for Pennington. This is a featherweight fight, 145 pounds. Raquel Pennington, I believe, was supposed to fight. Let me just pull this up real quick. She was supposed to fight somebody else. Julia Avila. Avila pulls out. Macy Chiasson comes in, short notice nature. So obviously they're going to give Chiasson the benefit of the doubt and allow this fight to take place at 145 pounds. Chiasson obviously going through a little bit of her own shit, right? She's scheduled to fight Aspen Ladd a couple times here. And if I'm not mistaken, I know Aspen Ladd missed weight last time around. But the real reason the fight that didn't actually happen was Chiasson didn't accept the extra weight from Ladd and decided to turn the fight down. So interesting caveat in that fight. Stylistically, how these go down. Chiasson, she's getting away a lot with just being physical, right? She's just a bigger
Yeah.
girl against a lot of these women, and she's able to just impose that and bully these women around. The Shanna Young fight is like the perfect example of that, where she just muscles everything and just almost tires herself out bullying Shanna Young. But luckily for her, Shanna coming up a weight class, much smaller, not as good, obviously, and she didn't fare well there. And then last time around against Marion Renault put up a damn good fight for, as wide as the odds were that I think the tide really started to turn after Chiasson broke her nose in the second round. I think it took like a minute into that fight or into that round where she ended up breaking her nose, and then you just see it pouring and leaking everywhere. Gotta feel like that affected her cardio. Gotta feel like that affected what she was able to do after that as well. But Chiasson, her striking leaves a lot to be desired. Very wild, very like, again, very not robotic, but like, it just doesn't look good, right? It's just like she's just trying to throw heat, not with much technique, and it seems like she's off balance at times when she's throwing her her strikes as well, which leaves a lot to be desired there. On the flip side, Pennington, a veteran of the game, I actually was wondering how old she was, and for some reason I thought she was like 36, 37 years old. She's only 33, which is kind of a surprise considering how long she's been around the UFC. But she's really rounding out her game pretty well, right? A full MMA game, right? She's not like the greatest at anything. She's a decent boxer. She's decent in the clinch. She's good with takedowns. She can do some good work from on top as well. Whereas Chiasson, she needs to be the bully in the fight. And if she's not able to, more than likely she's going to succumb to her opponent. That's exactly what happened in the Lena Landsberg fight, right? She was a huge favorite going into that fight. And then after that first round where she was able to accrue about 4 minutes of control time, she ends up getting controlled for about 8 minutes over the next 2 rounds because Landsberg was just beating her up in the clinch, dragging the fight to the ground and having success there. First round, a little bit iffy for me here if I'm choosing the Pennington side, but I do think she's going to start to pull away if this becomes a war of attrition in the second and third rounds. I'm liking Rocky here. I don't mind the money line on her. Obviously, a lot of money coming in on Chiasson. It pushed Rocky down from minus 230 to about minus 160 now. But in terms of a prop, I'm liking Pennington by decision at plus 115. I do think she'll grind out Chiasson over 15 minutes here. She might drop the first round, so it could be a possible live betting opportunity if you guys are into that. But I do think that Pennington takes this after a 15-minute fight. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a mess, to be honest. It's kind of a bummer because I liked Rocky. Rocky was like minus 125 against Avila, and I liked that quite a bit. And I actually liked Lad against Chiasson quite a bit, and that fell apart. With this fight, look, I mean, you kind of nailed it with Rocky. She's not, I'd say she's like a B minus B at everything. But, that's very good. There's very few fighters that are that well-rounded, but she's not great at anything. She is, I don't think Macy's very good at anything really except the clinch, to be honest. But I will say I didn't really like how Rocky looked in the clinch against Pani. I thought it was a pretty bad look, and she looks like she's declining, if I'm being honest. I know she's 33, but like you look at the Renault fight, she looked pretty sketchy in that fight too until Renault gassed out. So I think Rocky's declining a bit, and I do think Macy could give her issues in the clinch. On top of which, I do worry a bit about this fight being at 45. Macy's a big girl, and she might carry her power a bit more there. Plus, we've never really seen Rocky fight at that weight class. Will she be as quick? Will her gas be the same? I don't really know. It's a question that I don't really want to have money on to find out answered, But the other part of that, this is, though, like, even though Macy is a natural 45er, she might be bigger, she might be able to win in the clinch. Rocky's so much more skilled than she is, and it's like one of these fights where, Rocky's not the best wrestler, but if she ends up on Chiasson on top of her, like, it's probably the round and maybe the fight, if she ends up in that position. And so it's really, really tough for me to give, I don't want to say Macy much of a chance. Obviously, she has a chance here. But for me to, like, get on board with a Macy bet, like, I'd much rather be on Rocky. In terms of props, honestly, this is kind of a hot take, but I kind of like doesn't go at like plus 190. I know Rocky doesn't finish anybody, but like I said, at 145, we don't know what Rocky's going to be like. We do know for a female, Macy hits quite hard. And I think the grappling difference between the two of them, if it hits the mat, is substantial. I could see Rocky absolutely dominating her on the mat there and finishing her. I'm not passionate about it, but I do think when I was looking at it, like, do I want to lay a minus number on Rocky decision? Like, not really. I think I'd rather have her money line at like minus 165, if I was passionate about Rocky than betting the decision. I do think under is kind of an interesting stab here.
Interesting. I wasn't expecting that take at all. I do think if there is a finish, it probably comes from the Chiasson side. Maybe she does have some power in those hands, and she could be able to find that chin of Pennington here. But I see this playing out like a clinch battle. Like they're just trying to jockey for a position there. It would serve Pennington best, in my opinion, to kind of break off, get that space and get her boxing going. So hopefully that's what ends up happening. I do like Pennington a decent amount here, but I'm not going to completely overlook Macy Chiasson here.
I mean, Pennington is the far more skilled fighter, if we're
Yes.
being honest. Like that's the
Chiasson
reality.
is just raw. Chiasson, in my opinion, is still raw, very green in a sense, but she can still shape herself out. She's 30 years old, which was a little bit of a surprise, right? But I don't know why that she was being touted as being much younger when she came into the UFC and all that.
She was like minus 600 in every fight when she came into the
UFC.
exactly.
And then everybody had to rip up their tickets against fucking Lena Landsberg, which was hilarious. But all right, let's move on to the next fight here. Should be a fun one. We got Charles Jourdain going up against Andre Ewell. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 185 for Jourdain and plus 160 for Ewell. Jourdain opened up around minus 205, 220, and then some money coming in on Ewell to bring him back down here. I'm very intrigued by this fight. I actually like Andre Ewell a decent amount here, and that hurts for me to say against a fellow Canadian and Charles Jourdain, who I've been following for as long as I have, but there is just this hype tax that attached to the guy's name because he's exciting to watch, right? Spinning shit, flying shit, always puts on a bit of a war with his opponents, isn't afraid to engage in a firefight and trade in the pocket. But I don't think that Andre Ewell is going to comply with that this time around. I do think that we'll see a similar fight to him where he's able to kind of just do that classic Andre Ewell thing. Jab from the outside, use that long, crisp jab from the outside. His 1-2 down the middle is absolute money. And I do think that he can stick and move pretty well here to kind of just trickle his way to a 15-minute decision, man. Jourdain's really going to have to put his foot on the gas and try to, goat Ewell into some sort of a war here. But I just don't think that Ewell's going to comply here. I will say a little bit of a cardio worry for Ewell in case he starts to slow down, trying to keep up that pace and trying to stay away from the big bombs of Jourdain. And then obviously we've seen Jourdain come back in the late in fights and fine finishes as well. That's absolutely live for him here. But I do like that Ewell by decision around plus 330. I think that has a decent enough chance of hitting here if he does remain disciplined and kind of fights the way that we know he can fight when he is successful. And I feel like this is a perfect spot for him to do so. So, Jourdain could possibly find the chin, could possibly knock him out at a certain points. But I think a lot of Jourdain's success is predicated on finding the finish, because if he goes for a decision, he's not really a great minute winner, right? Like unless he knocks his opponent down or he has tremendous success in that aspect, I think he was going to be the better minute winner. I think he's going to be the one kind of with the more output, the more effective output in a sense, and he should be able to get his way to a decision here. I've heard takes on Ewell inside the distance. I kind of get it, but I just don't know if he's really going to push the gas here and not try to, expose himself to potentially getting finished by a heavy hitter and unorthodox striker like Jourdain. So I'm expecting a classic Ewell performance here, man. I took a shot on him at underdog odds, plus 168, but I also took a little bit of a poke on his decision prop here at plus 330 because I think it's a damn good spot. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I like Ewell quite a bit. Like, you kind of nailed it with Jourdain. Like, he's a fun fighter, but I think people kind of interpret fun as being like this super prospect, and I don't really think that's the case. He's obviously dynamic. He hits hard. He can finish guys, but his game doesn't have a lot of process to it. He's not a great defensive grappler. Not that should matter here. He's not the best offensive grappler. His volume can be pretty suspect at times. You watch he hasn't had a ton of similar matchups to this, but the closest is probably the Joshua Coolbet fight, who's also a southpaw. And you saw Jourdain really just until round 3 when he managed to hurt Coolbet and Coolbet slowed down. You saw him get stuck on the outside and not really have any idea kind of how to close the distance. And now he's dealing with a guy in Andre Ewell, who, in my opinion, is a much better version of what Coolbet brought to the table there. Ewell's a very sharp boxer. He manages distance very, very well. He's got a 7-inch or 6-inch reach advantage here, I think, too. And so for Jourdain to close the distance, I think he's going to have to, really let his hands go and like throw in combination to get inside. But that's not classically, that hasn't really been his game. He goes for a lot of like really spectacular big stuff. I just don't know that he's going to have many opportunities to like set that up here. And if he gets stuck on the outside, he's just going to get picked apart, in my opinion. The other thing I think Jourdain could do is go for calf kicks, but Ewell did a pretty good job early, like for the first 12 minutes, really avoiding the calf kicks of Chris Gutierrez, who's one of the better calf kickers, in the world, really. And, eventually Gutierrez got off on them, but he's a much more proactive kicker than Jourdain is. And so I look at this fight, and yeah, you mentioned it. The gas tank with Andre Ewell is always kind of like the big red flag with him. But I don't know that, like, you look at the fights where he's gassed and they've been fought at hellish paces. Jourdain doesn't historically fight at a hellish pace. And if he's just kind of stuck on the outside getting jabbed, I'm not really sure he's got, the tools to gas Ewell out. Ewell won round 3 against Jonathan Martinez with one hand. It's not like he hasn't looked fresh in round 3s in the past. Like, he gassed out against Marlon Vera, who brings an insane pace. Gutierrez, who was basically just destroying his legs at the end of that fight. Erwin Rivera, who he dominated, but who just wouldn't stop coming forward. Jourdain, that's not really his game. So I'm kind of with you here. I do think you could give some credence maybe to a Ewell knockout, just because we have seen Charles rocked a good bit. But I do agree largely. I think the play here is the decision for Ewell. I think, the gas concerns are a bit overblown in this matchup. Yeah, look, if you like Charles Jourdain, don't lay the minus 200. The under is about minus 100. I'd be very, very, very surprised if Jourdain covers his price in a decision, to be honest. So I like Ewell a good bit. I like Ewell decision here.
I have heard the argument about Jourdain kicking legs, and you kind of touched on that as well. Not as proactive again as other fighters who have been successful with it against you. Maybe it's something that Jourdain picks up on for this fight and decides to attack it. And if that is the case, then so be it, right? We can't guess that he's going to.
Yeah, but he also might just get countered bad if he tries to do it, because he throws a lot of those kicks naked, and he's going to have to come inside Ewell's reach to land them, so.
For sure. I do want to give a quick shout out here to Mbe, who jumps into streams every now and then. Always thought it was a troll for some reason. Turns out she's a real person. I've seen her on somebody else's stream, and it's actually somebody that's real. So shout out to Mbe and her commitment to being in the MMA live streaming community on YouTube. Shout out to you and good luck on your bets this weekend. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. I'm sure you have some passionate takes about this one. We got Sijara Eubanks going up against Melissa Gatto. In terms of odds, we got minus 160 on Eubanks, plus 140 on Melissa Gatto. Me and you seem to be pretty high on Eubanks in a sense, right? It's weird to say that about a fighter that's 7-6, but we see this every fight week. If I don't tweet it, somebody else tweets it. Sijara Eubanks is the best 6-6 fighter in the world. Sijara Eubanks is the best 7-6 fighter in the world. It always happens, but it rings true, man, because she is damn good, especially when she's able to fight at 125 pounds. Now, if you include her run on The Ultimate Fighter, she's 6-1 as a flyweight. Obviously, she missed weight in one of those fights. I'm trying to recall which one it is. It's just escaping me at this moment. But when a fight is scheduled for 125 pounds, she is 6-1. Her only loss, I believe, was her second ever professional fight, where she went up against Katlyn Chookagian, who's already 4-0 at that time. But again, that really goes to show that Eubanks, in my opinion, needs to be at 125 pounds. Last time, obviously, she fought Elise Reed, looked damn good on the scales. She looked, damn good in the fight, obviously being able to get the finish there. But I feel as though she's starting to master that cut to 125 pounds. I don't want to, ride home about it or anything like that, because we have the weigh-ins coming up right now. I think they just kicked off. So I want to see what she looks like on the scale personally first before I actually pull the trigger here. But I'm damn close to pulling the trigger, because again, this is another one where we saw a ton of line movement, a ton of love coming in on Melissa Gatto, and it's actually brought down Eubanks to around minus 165, which is a line I very much like here. Gatto was a little bit of an unknown coming into her UFC debut against Victoria Leonardo, because she got signed to the UFC and then she got put on the shelf because she got tested positive by USADA there. But before that, she was actually able to pick up a victory over Carol Hossa in a fight where Hossa gets a takedown, but leaves her arm a little bit exposed and then ends up getting Kimura there. So good win for Gatto to eventually earn that contract to get into the UFC. Then the Victoria Leonardo fight. So, sorry. Leonardo, gets that top position, but isn't really that safe from on top, right? She has all these submission attempts being thrown at her, some reversal attempts and all that. And we saw Gatto have some success in terms of, intimidating her from when she is on top. It's one of those rare cases where a fighter who has the top position isn't actually winning, right? That's what it seemed like there. And then when they got back on the feet, Leonardo just seemed completely outgunned there as well. Gatto really putting on the pace with aggression. I don't think she's the greatest striker by any means, but I think that her mixture with aggression and just moving forward really got to Victoria Leonardo. And then obviously we know how that fight ended up going in terms of getting called off after the second round. Sijara Eubanks, again, coming coming off a career best performance. I do think she shines once again here. I do think we see her successfully complete takedowns. And then we've seen Gatto, even in regional fights, she plays off of her back a little bit too much. That Sydney Hocha fight, I don't know how that fight went to a draw, man. That there must have been some sort of tampering or some bullshit going on, because in my opinion, Sydney Hocha won that fight. No ifs, ands, or buts. She won that fight. But what we saw in that fight was Gatto just playing off her back a little bit too much, trusting her jiu-jitsu a little bit too much. Now, this is going to be her toughest opponent in terms of somebody that actually has world-class jiu-jitsu as well with Sijara Eubanks. And I think that Eubanks will be safe enough to be able to ride her on top and kind of just control her, land some good damage, maybe, advanced positions, getting quality top time. On the feet, could get a little bit sticky. Sijara isn't horrible on the feet, but I do think the aggression of Gatto could potentially give her some issues. Gas tank issue, that's always something that comes up in the Sijara Eubanks fight. I feel like she's solved that in a sense, especially when she's at 125 pounds. But we can't 100% say that until we see her go out there and do it again, hopefully tomorrow night against Melissa Gatto here. So I like me some Eubanks. I like her at minus 160, but I even like her prop here at decision, via decision, which I currently believe is plus 150. Eubanks by decision, yeah, plus 150 or plus 160, depending on where you're looking at. I like that all, man. I like it all. I think this is a spot where people are a little bit too high on Gatto, and then they're going to see when she actually goes up against a legitimate competitor, she's going to fall up short. So I like Eubanks here. Taking her by decision. What are you liking here?
Let me ask you something. If I told you they were just going to strike for 15 minutes, would you favor Gatto in that kind of a fight?
Just based on her aggression, slightly, man, just slightly. I know that Eubanks is a decent striker, but again, like if she keeps pushing her back, I don't know. But Eubanks has decent enough technique on the feet that she could probably thwart that forward aggression as well.
Yeah, like that's kind of my thing, because like I actually think I would look. I watched Eubanks completely gassed out, hang on the feet with Patty Kianzad, who's one of the best boxers in all of WMMA, and certainly at 135, a weight class up. Like I'd be surprised if she gets bullied on the feet here. But even beyond that, yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Look, the bottom line is even the gas tank stuff. I kind of think the market just holds the Betch fight against her for whatever reason, even though it was years ago. And by the way, like I know Betch Correa is like a walking cartoon character, but the girl fought for a title, it's not like Betch is out here losing the bums,
Yeah.
So like that people get her a little too much shit for that. She's actually won 60% of the round threes she's been in her career. And if you want to go to 125 and look at her career there, she hasn't lost a round there. She dominated Lauren Murphy for 3 rounds at 125. She dominated Roxanne twice at 125. She dominated Deanna Bennett at 125. She dominated Elise Reed in her last fight there. I think something people don't, I brought this up last night, but like Jessica Andrade, people used to say had bad gas when she was at 135. Why? Because it took a ton of energy for her to use her game plan and get girls down at that weight class. I think it's kind of the same thing here. Like anybody who's like ever been, wrestled on a team and done practices or jiu-jitsu with bigger guys, it is much more exhausting taking bigger people down than it is someone your own size, And I think that's the issue here with Eubanks and has been for a career. And kind of you touched on it too. It's not like it's not like we've seen Eubanks go into like Rodolfo Vieira level of death gas where she's like giving up. She never quits. She'll bite down on the mouthpiece when she's gassed out and let her hands go. And so even if you were to assume, let's just say that she won't get a takedown in the last 2 rounds, she's probably going to be in a close fight that I'd still favor her in. Gatto's best path to victory here is a close decision. The other side of things, you nailed it. I mean, Cindy Roca held Melissa Gatto down. Hossa was holding her down, no problem, and just got armbarred. Look, Sijara Eubanks has literally won a gold medal at the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships in 2015. She is as good as it gets in Jiu-Jitsu. She's a very good wrestler. I think there's virtually no chance of her getting subbed from bottom. I think maybe if she was gassed out, but I really don't think so, man. Avila is probably similar level of Jiu-Jitsu to Gatto, and Eubanks had no trouble staying on top of her there for the last 2 rounds of that fight. I think Eubanks gets takedowns pretty easily here if she wants them. I think she holds Gatto down without really any problem at all. And like I said, I think on the feet, she's better as well. Like the way I look at it is for Gatto to win this fight, it's probably a grimy, close decision where Eubanks slows down and it's still maybe a split-like decision. Whereas Eubanks could win that kind of a fight, but I also think Eubanks has the vast majority of the finishing upside here, even though I don't expect to finish. And I think she has the vast majority of like dominant win upside too. Like if someone's going to come out here and win 30-27, I'm almost positive it's Sijara, so you're giving me an elite top girl in an elite top game against the guard player who attempts 5 to 6 takedowns for 15 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to go with Eubanks here. Like, don't forget, everybody and their brother was betting on Victoria Leonardo against Melissa Gatto in her last fight. Victoria Leonardo was not a UFC quality fighter. And honestly, I don't know what you thought rewatching that fight, but rewatching it and knowing Leonardo broke her arm in the first round, that was a competitive fight. It was a very competitive fight. And now we have Sijara Eubanks at minus 160 against Melissa Gatto. Like, give me a fucking break here. I think Eubanks is going to smash her, to be honest. I like the decision as well, though, because even though I do think in theory Eubanks could finish her, she's really never been that proactive about chasing a finish. You know, she's happy to just move to half guard and just kind of lock down the position there and hold people down. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of think her decision line should probably be about even money, and it's plus 150. So I like that quite a bit here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as well. And again, in the Elise Reed fight, obviously she was able to get the finisher given the vast difference in skill there, especially when the fight hit the ground.
Yeah, and I did not bet Leonardo PayPal, just FYI. I'm just saying many people did.
There you go. There you go. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got a heavyweight slugfest between Justin Tafa and Harry Hunsucker. In terms of odds, minus 320 on Tafa, plus 260, sorry, on Harry Hunsucker. I was going to bring up this fight when we were talking about the Mays and Parisian fight, but I'm sure you watched the tape on Mays and Hunsucker, and goddamn, how hilarious of a fight was that. Like a minute and a half of Hunsucker trying to get Dontel Mays down and then just gasses himself out and gets finished. I think he was even tapping the strikes too, if I'm not mistaken. But Hunsucker in his 7-fight professional MMA career, never seen the second round, which is absolutely hilarious. Or sorry, not even 7 fights, 11-fight career. I'm not sure why I said 7 fights. 11-fight career. He has never seen the judges the second round at all. Usually goes out there and either just starches his opponents. Sometimes he'll try to look for the takedown and try to just rain down blows from on top, or he just gasses out trying to do so and then gets finished himself. And I'm thinking that no matter who gets their hand raised here, it's more than likely going to be happening in the first round here. We've seen Justin Tafa get starched in the past, so him at minus 320 is absolutely laughable, knowing that he can get knocked the fuck out. And I think that Hunsucker could absolutely do that. Just based on what we've been seeing on social media, seems like Hunsucker is really tightening up, right? Like the guy looks like he's trying to get into a little bit better shape. He was always a thick dude, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he weighs in this morning, considering he looks like he's in much better shape. But no matter how this fight goes, I expect it to finish inside the first round. Whether it's Hunsucker looking for a takedown and then smashing from on top, or Tafa catching him with the counter on the way in, he's probably the cleaner striker of the two. That's pretty much obvious, but I think that both guys have that tremendous knockout power. And given the variable of Harry Hunsucker, that's the guy that's going to make this under 1.5, or this fight doesn't go to round 2 hit. I personally have a play on the under 1.5. I took 2 units at minus 190. And I'm looking for Pinnacle to drop the fight to not start round 2. And if they do drop that, I'll more than likely be taking a poke on that as well. I'm seeing around minus 125, minus 130 on certain markets. Still think that's a damn good spot. Another prop, Harry Hunsucker round 1 KO plus 1,000, worth the stab, considering how much of a car crash I expect this fight to be. So yeah, I actually think it's going to be Tafa that eventually finds a chin here, but I don't care who gets knocked out. It's got to happen in the first round. That's kind of what I'm banking on, and that's why I think that the prop should be skewed towards. It seems like you're in agreement. How do you feel about this one?
I am in agreement with that. I think the under is nice here. I think all kinds of early round props are nice, but I got to tell you, I have this feeling in my bones that Hunsucker might be like the best value of the card. I'm not saying I bet him. I haven't. It's just like, dude, Justin Tafa is really bad at MMA. Like that, like that's the reality is like you look at the 2 fights that have gotten extended with him. Jared Van Der doesn't hit particularly hard. Neither does Carlos Felipe. And look, to a degree, I don't think Tafa looked terrible in those fights because he showed a level of output we haven't seen from him before, and that was nice. But I mean, Tafa seems, I don't know, he seems kind of fragile and panicky. Like, I kind of get the feeling that when someone gets in his face, he's going to crumble. We saw in the second half of the Vandera fight, when Vandera started getting in his face, he didn't really like it. And look, I'll say this every time I break down a Tafa fight until he gets cut, but one of these days, people are going to understand why I max bet Juan Adams against him, because he's going to end up on the ground and he's going to look helpless because he is helpless on the mat. Like, I am telling you, Andrew and I always joke about, we wish we could corner these fighters, because I don't care what your wrestling background is. If you're fighting Justin Tafa, dive at his legs. The man is hilariously awful on the mat. And guess what? Harry Hunsucker attempts takedowns in the first round from time to time. You guys want a Lambo shot here? The plus 1800 sub 1 for Harry Hunsucker could be a gift. Dude, I'm telling you, man, like if he hits a takedown here, there's literally a chance that it's like a 50-50 he subs him right away. But with that said, look, the bottom line is I think we all know the Hunsucker deal. Hunsucker, when he faces adversity, he tends to quit. He tends to gas out very quick. I like the under 1.5 because you know what? If I'm betting an under 1.5, I hate betting them, but what I want in it, I want to have at least one guy who's going to bite the mouthpiece and go for it, and that's Hunsucker's MO. It's what he does every fight. He's going to bite down, and he's going to look to take your head off or die. He's completely kill or be killed. I don't know. I have a feeling he's going to go in there and beat Justin Tafa, to be honest. I think that round 1 sub prop is worth taking a stab at. Yeah, I like Hunsucker here. He's probably going to die, let's be honest, but honestly, I think he has a decent shot to get Tafa out of there. So, more violence, I think, is the way to play this fight.
Yeah, Hunsucker round 1 plus 700 is still not even that bad considering how.
No, it's not bad.
I'm right there with you, man.
Would you? I mean, look at Justin Tafa's wins in his career, right? He's 4-3. He has 7 fights. 3 of those wins are against Australian cans, and the 4th is Juan Adams refusing to wrestle and just getting KO'd. That is. I mean, this is not a UFC level talent, okay? So you have 2 guys. One of them has double the experience and also is going to go for it, and he's plus 300 and plus 700 in round 1. Like, you tell me.
Dude, I'm right there with you. That's why I'm betting the unders here, man. I might even go in a little bit of a stab on a Hunsucker round 1 or even a Hunsucker KO or sub, man. I think it's all live here, considering how bad Justin Tafa is. Again, we all know that Hunsucker sucks as well, but when you're putting him up against a guy like Justin Tafa, he actually has more tools to win this fight, which is absolutely hilarious, but is what it is. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. I believe we are at, nope, we're not at the main card yet. Next up, we got Raoni Barcelos going up against Victor Henry. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 345, for Barcelos and plus 285 to return on Victor Henry. Now, Victor Henry is not one of those short notice slouches that just jump. He's not a Justin James type of guy coming into the UFC. He might actually find himself getting a win or 2 inside the UFC. Given the kind of skill that he has. Trained by Josh Barnett. Decent wrestling, decent top control. A little herky-jerky with his striking approach. Likes the leg kick. If he's successful with it early, he'll try to lay on it, just as we saw in that Dennis Levitt fight. Absolutely butchering the guy's name is what it is. But in the rematch, we saw Dennis have success in terms of grounding Victor Henry and then having success from there. We've seen Victor Henry get subbed in the past as well. Decent fighter. But again, I think he's going to be completely unmatched here by a guy like Raoni Barcelos, who I've been very high on for a lot. I know he hit a little bit of a speed bump in his last fight against Timur Valiev, but that was one of those fights where I feel like he learned a very valuable lesson, which is you can't be gun shy. You got to throw some volume. He easily gave up round 1 by not throwing any volume. Got easily out volume in that fight by Valiev. And then when he started throwing some punches in the second round, he lands on Valiev, knocks him down. I believe he got at least a 10-8 on one scorecard in that fight or in that round. I don't think it deserved a 10-8. I know he was close to finishing him, but considering the amount of success that Valiev had earlier in that round, kind of nullifies the 10-8. And then in this third round, Valiev pulls ahead a little bit more in terms of the output, and then obviously gets a decision victory there. I'd be surprised if Barcelos doesn't pull a trigger here against Victor Henry, who's slightly more stationary than what we were getting for Valiev, and that probably played into Barcelos not throwing as much because it was harder to track down a guy like Valiev. But I think he should be able to do some work here against Victor Henry. I do think he's worth the minus 300, minus 350, to be honest, that he's currently at. I do have him parlayed with something else later on this card. But I wouldn't be surprised with the finish here from Barcelos. I think the sub prop is a little interesting here. I think it's currently sitting at plus 455 for Barcelos by submission. We've seen, like I said, Victor Henry get subbed in the past quite often. I think Henry's going to be Barcelos is going to be the better wrestler, especially when they get into the scrambling positions as well. I think we'll see Barcelos end up on top. But I think ultimately I do see this fight going the full 50 minutes with some interesting grappling exchanges. And I do think we see Barcelos get his hand raised here by decision at plus 160. I don't mind that play either. How are you seeing this one go down, brother?
Yeah. So like I bet Barcelos on mine. I think FanDuel opened it at like minus 290. So I took some of that there. I don't. My issue with props on a fight like this is like it's just kind of Barcelos' approach to fights, right? Like the guy is one of the best wrestlers like in bantamweight, and he's one of the best fighters at bantamweight. The problem is he so rarely fights to his strengths, which is pretty frustrating. You know, when you're backing him, it's like, dude, the Saeed Nurmagomedov fight, it's like, why am I sweating this bet? Like all you have to do is take him down, and then you see in round 3 he takes him down and dominates him there, and it's like, what? Why did this take you 10 minutes to actually decide, fight to your strengths? You see it with him over and over again, which is frustrating. The Taha fight, he decided to go to war with Taha for 10 of the 15 minutes in that fight. And it's like, why are you doing this? Like, I appreciate you're more skilled, but you have a way to take no damage here, which is just take him down and hold him there.
Yeah.
And like, I do think if Barcelos decided, okay, I'm going to sub this guy, I actually think that could look like massive value, his sub line. But like I said, he tends to like let the fight kind of come to him and not really ever want to put like a stamp on it. The thing is, in terms of the matchup itself, I think Henry's cool. I think it would have been fun if they gave Henry, he's someone a bit more low level who was going to come out there and go to war with him, but that's not what he's walking into here. And unfortunately, he's got a nice kick game, but in the boxing range, he is just massively outclassed. And in the grappling, he's also massively outclassed here. So unless, look, the Valiev fight's a concern, but Valiev's a stud, man. Like, this is not Timur Valiev that he's fighting. Yeah. Unless he just lets Henry kick him from the outside, I don't really see many paths to victory for Henry outside of like memeing some kind of a finish. But Barcelos seems super durable, man. I mean, you watch that fight with Kurt Holloway, the dude was eating shots on the chin with like zero problem. So I think, if Barcelos wants to wrestle him, he could look minus 1,000 here. He's a much, much better grappler. But even on the feet, I don't think Henry provides many issues to him. I don't mind a sub stab, but personally, I just think because of the way Barcelos fights, I'd rather have decision. I like the plus 150. But again, I actually don't, I'm not the guy that usually advocates parlays, but I actually don't think Barcelos is a bad parlay spot, to be honest with you.
Yeah, even seeing you take a stab at minus 290 straight up on a play is interesting to see. But again, if you see value on it, you see value. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. I believe this is now the prelim headliner, and I really don't understand it considering how many fights are under it that I believe deserve to be a prelim headliner more. So, but we got Gerald Meerschaert taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Both these guys are scheduled to fight other fighters. I believe Gerald Meerschaert was supposed to welcome Abusipan Magomedov, former PFL fighter. I think he was supposed to welcome him, and then obviously Dustin Stoltzfus. I believe he was supposed to fight. Let me just pull this up right here. He's supposed to fight Cal Borralho, the guy from the Contender Series. He was also supposed to fight Anthony Hernandez as well. So this is actually going to be the third opponent that Dustin Stoltzfus is preparing himself for. In terms of odds, minus 230 a share for Gerald Meerschaert, plus 190 for Dustin Stoltzfus. I get it. GM3 is the better fighter of the two, but seeing him more often not get pounded on in his fights before he eventually finds a finish is a little bit concerning for me, especially a minus 230 here. Now, obviously, Rodolfo Vieira having as much striking success as he did against Dustin Stoltzfus is a big red flag, and not to mention being able to, Rodolfo Vieira out cardioing Dustin Stoltzfus, it seemed, and eventually getting that third round submission was hilarious. So yeah, those are big red flags, and I completely understand why you would not want to back him, especially in this spot against GM3. GM3, slow, very hittable, but damn good on the ground, is very versatile with the amount of submissions that he's going to be able to attempt. And I think he could do that here against Dustin Stoltzfus in terms of he might get lit up a little bit early in this fight, but I think that the longer it goes, we'll see him successful in terms of imposing his size. The dude is a huge 185er, and I do think that he'll be able to drag Stoltzfus down eventually and then start putting that jiu-jitsu to use and potentially finding a submission here. Third round prop, obviously live here for GM3. He's had a couple late finishes. Obviously, Dustin Stoltzfus, like I said, getting out cardio by Rodolfo Vieira, not a good look. But yeah, GM3 inside the distance, not a bad look here either at even money. I would much rather take that than take the minus 230 on Gerald Meerschaert here. Plus 100 for Meerschaert inside the distance, and in terms of Meerschaert round 3 plus 850. Again, I like those 4-digit plus numbers for round 3 props, and that's not really tickling my fancy enough here. Personally, I'm passing on it. I know a lot of people that are high on Gerald in this spot, and I completely understand it. But for some reason, I don't know why, and I know this is a completely different stylistic matchup, but I just see Nicholas Stoltzfus and Jared Gooden playing in my head in terms of Stoltzfus was like a minus 230 favorite in that fight, minus 250 favorite in that fight. And everybody just kind of accepted, like, yeah, he's probably going to beat Jared Gooden. Let's just chuck him into a parlay, or let's just play him as an afterthought. And then what do we get? Jared Gooden just absolutely starching him within a minute. That could happen here. You know what I mean? Dustin Stoltzfus, again, I'm still trying to figure out what he's really good at, but he's definitely the faster of the two, and he could possibly land a good enough strike here to put Joe Meerschaert on wobbly legs, who's been on wobbly legs in almost every single one of his fucking fights. So I'm not sure how you can trust him at minus 230, but the inside the distance around even money is not too bad of a spot. So that's the way I'd go. Meerschaert inside the distance, even money. That's the only prop I really like here. What about you?
Yeah, Gerald Meerschaert fights are like WWE fights, right? Like you never really know. They're always back and forth. Like someone's mounting him, he's sweeping them, crazy stuff is happening. And it doesn't matter who the opponent is. It doesn't matter if they're really good, and it doesn't matter if they're really bad. And that's kind of like my thing with GM3, right? Like I feel like on any given day, GM3 can hang with pretty much anybody in the division, at least on moments. He'll have big moments against virtually anybody. Like you look at the Hermanson fight, he gets finished there, but not before he sweeps him out of mount, from first,
Yeah.
But also GM3 is the kind of guy that can go life and death with someone who's not in the top 40. So it's like, I do think skill-wise, the line is probably short. Like Meerschaert has the tools to cover this number. Will he? I don't really know. I don't trust him because he does put himself in so many really uncomfortable and awkward situations, It's a weird fight, to be honest. Even like, I guess if I were betting it, it would be Gerald ITD. But my problem is, like, the Stoltzfus Vieira fight, man. Like you mentioned it, Stoltzfus let Vieira just out jab him. He pretty much refused to engage in that fight. I honestly felt like I bet Stoltzfus the fight, and I felt like if at any point he actually put his hands together for an extended combination, he could have gotten Vieira out of there. But he just didn't seem to want any of it. Now maybe that's Vieira and Vieira's level of jiu-jitsu, so he won't do that here. But it's hard to unsee that in my brain, him just avoiding the fight. And like we've seen a kind of similar fight to that with GM3 before, the Anders fight, where it was like neither guy really engaged in the grappling, and GM3 kind of just accepted it and was accepting jabbing with him, and so playing like any kind of violent stuff here does make me a bit on the nervous side. But with that said, I don't think Stoltzfus is a UFC quality fighter at all, and GM3 is an elite finisher. So it's like, if you're going to play a prop here, I think the best way to do it is to play GM3 inside the distance at plus 100. But I'm not passionate about it because like, I don't know, GM3 basically is variance incarnate, like I don't really, you never know what's going to happen in his fights. I get why people see value on him. Like I said, I think he has the tools to make this line look very, very short in hindsight, but I don't really trust it. But yeah, if I'm picking a prop, I'm going to say GM3 inside the distance.
It's interesting that the over 1.5 is at minus 165 and the under 2.5 is at minus 130. That's kind of how I see it playing out too. I think it goes over 1.5, but we eventually get that GM3 finish at some point, late second round, early third round. So I don't mind that over 1.5 either in the spot. But again, I'm passing on this fight in total. I want nothing to do with it. It's going to look ugly at a certain point. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. I believe we are on the main card now. Just a reminder, 4 p.m. Eastern prelim start time, 7 p.m. Eastern main card start time. So slightly earlier than we're used to, which is great. Again, I'm not going to be watching this shit live, so I don't really give a shit, but just trying to help you viewers out who are going to be watching it live. All right, first fight on the main card. Jourdain Elkins going up against Cub Swanson. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 190-ish for Cub Swanson and plus 170, plus 165 the return here on Jourdain Elkins. It's always great watching those Jourdain Elkins comeback victories, right? Obviously, last time around against Derek Minner, where he was able to survive early. Derek Minner, giving us that classic James Gross, no Derek moment. I love it, trying to pull guillotine in that second round and then falling off. And obviously, Jourdain Elkins was able to take over from there. I just don't know if he'll be able to do that here to Cub Swanson. The skill difference in terms of the striking is so far apart. Yeah, Jourdain Elkins moves forward, and yeah, he has a hell of a chin on him. But Cub Swanson, man, when he's on, especially with the striking, he is going to make his opponents suffer. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here with Darren Elkins. I don't mind Cub Swanson by KO. I think that's very live in this situation. I do think he's going to catch Darren Elkins with pretty much any and everything that he throws here. Plus 250 on Swanson by KO is a damn good line, in my opinion, considering how much of a difference we'll see here in that skill set. If this fight does get dragged to the ground, obviously we've seen Cub Swanson get strangled in the past. We've had to question his black belt in the past as well. But I think here against Darren Elkins, it's Darren Elkins, when he has success, a lot of it is cardio based, right? It's a lot of just grinding out his opponents and just waiting for them to kind of tire out. And I just don't know if Swanson really has that big death gas in him that a lot of these other fighters have had, where Darren Elkins has had success. The Meerschaert Bektic fight, and obviously the Derek Minner fight, the most notable ones. But I think that Swanson has enough juice to go 50 minutes if he's required to do so. I just don't think he's going to be required to do so here. I like Swanson, probably first or second round KO. I think he starches Darren Elkins pretty easily here. Yeah. Last thing I'll say, age argument. Everybody always wants to bring that up. Swanson just turned 38 last month. Darren Elkins is going to be 38 in May. So I think it's a bit of a wash in terms of throwing that into the argument here. Alex Swanson by KO plus 250. Where are you at here?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like, I saw Gugabe post earlier that he'd rather have Swanson by KO than Swanson moneyline. And I think that's right. Like, Elkins is my boy. Like, I've backed him forever. I was huge on him against Garagori. I bet him against Landwehr. I bet him against Minner. But he is atrophying pretty quickly. And look, I know the guy has always taken a lot of damage and always bled. Like, that's not really what's concerning to me. What's concerning to me is his reactions to shots are getting a lot worse. Like, I was big on him against Garagori. Like I said, like, I did not think that should have been a competitive fight. And Garagori hurt him bad in the second round of that fight. And Eduardo Garagori does not hit nearly as hard as Cub Swanson or nearly as technical as he is.
As accurate.
Yeah. And so if Cub's going to win this fight and cover his price, it means he's going to tee off on Elkins bad here. And I kind of think when it ends for Elkins, it's going to end really ugly, and this could be the start of it. My thing is, look, is there a path for Elkins? Yeah, there is. It probably means nonstop pressure, getting off a good amount of volume, and landing 3 or 4 takedowns. Could that happen? Yeah, but I do think Swanson's defense gets underrated from that Edgar fight, which was way back in the day, and no one's really done that to him since. Pineda took him down, couldn't control him there. No one's really been able to control him on the mat since the Edgar fight. I don't expect Elkins to be able to here. I think Cub's going to get off at will. Yeah, I like the Cub KO here. I love Elkins. I don't want to see him go out viciously, but I have a feeling it's going to happen. And you're giving me 3-1 on a super technical striker who hits hard against Darren Elkins, who can keep the fight standing. I got to take it.
I like it. Glad we're on the same page there. Personally, I could see this going 50 minutes if that Elkins chin just does not crack. I don't mind having the money line here on Swanson. I actually ended up parlaying him with Barcelos. That's the parlay that I had here. I got them together at -102. I thought that was a damn good price to get on both of those guys as well. So, but yeah, glad we're on the same side there. All right, let's move on to the next right here. Carlos Diego Ferreira going up against Mateusz Gamrot. I'm trying to channel into my inner John Anik there with this Polish name that we got here. -185 for Gamrot, +160 for Diego Ferreira. Gamrot, really stringing some wins together after falling short in his UFC debut against Guram Kutateladze. A lot of people thought he deserved to win that fight. If you actually look at MMA decisions, most media scored that fight for Kutateladze. It was actually the fans and the public that actually scored. I believe it was rounds 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken, or 1 and 3 for Gamrot. And that's kind of what I agree with too. I thought Gamrot did enough in terms of landing takedowns and getting some top pressure and top control to be able to get that judge's decision. Obviously, in his next 2 fights, didn't need to worry too much about the judges because he's able to dispatch both of Jeremy Stevens by Kimura 1 minute and 5 seconds into that first round. And then obviously starches Skull Holtzman with a beautiful 1-2 in that second round, stifling him there. I've been a big guy on Diego Ferreira in the past. I was a huge believer of Fortis Ferreira. Backed him a couple times, managed to cash. Obviously, fell short against Benny Dariush. I didn't have the balls to bet against Gregor Gillespie, and thankfully I didn't. And we saw Carlos Diego Ferreira miss weight pretty bad in that fight, and then obviously gassed out in that second round. So I'm very interested to see what he looks like on the scales this morning if he actually hits the scale. I wanted to bet Ferreira here, but I can't do it, man. I do like Gamrot here. I do think he's kind of on the upside here. I do think that Ferreira is slowly starting to slow down. But again, losses to Gregor Gillespie and Benil Dariush are not bad losses. Obviously, those are spots that we have to respect. But the way that he's losing those fights was a little bit concerning to me in terms of the Benil Dariush fight, specifically in terms of getting taken down. The chain wrestling really seems to be the main thing that gets to Carlos Diego Ferreira. He can shuck off a takedown temper too, but it's if you're able to kind of chain them together. And that's the progression I think that we're seeing from Gamrot now is earlier in his career, he's just throwing one takedown out there. If it's not successful, he kind of backs off, goes back to his striking. But his last two fights, you see the chain wrestling kind of getting better and better. His work down there at ATT is really paying off for him. And I think that we're going to see here against Ferreira. Ferreira, when he's on, constant forward pressure, doesn't let you breathe, a little bit wild striking, but it's just to allow that aggressiveness to kind of be as advantageous as it is as possible. If you want to see Diego Ferreira at his best, watch the Meerschaert Tyson fight. But I just don't think he's that fighter anymore. I think that fighter is gone, and I think that Gamrot is on a completely different trajectory here. I think Gamrot is a slicker striker, may get behind slightly on output, which is a little bit of concern. But I do think he'll be able to mix in some takedowns here and get some decent top pressure. I know he wasn't having crazy amount of success in terms of her holding Guram down because Guram was throwing up submissions time and time again. But I think that if Diego tries to do that here as well, he will probably start to slow down and we'll see Gamrot start to take over here. I like Gamrot by decision as well. I do think that he'll mix in his striking and takedowns well enough here to get the judge's decision here. Gamrot by decision, plus 145. Count me in. I feel like we're going to clash heads here a little bit. Hit me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on an island here. Add you to the list of a number of sharp people I know who like Gamrot in this spot. Look, I think Gamrot's game is interesting. Obviously, anybody who can wrestle at the level he can wrestle at is an intriguing prospect. He's obviously quite a good boxer. I don't think he's the best control grappler personally, and I've had some people disagree with me on that, but that's my read of the situation. I'm also not entirely sold he's going to look to grapple Ferreira aggressively. I mean, we saw Gregor do it, and like I think Gregor's top ability is considerably better than Gamrot's is, and even he got put in some really, really dangerous positions early in that fight. So I'm not really sure Gamrot's going to come out here, at least while they're fresh, and look to take Ferreira down over and over again. Even if he does, though, I do think there are some spots where Ferreira can have success. Gamrot's wrestling is excellent, but he does shoot that low single real low, and he is begging for one of these days to miss that and someone just spin to the back and take it. And like, this is not the guy you want to do that. I'm not saying it'll happen because he is out quite good at it, but I don't know. I'd be a little surprised if he controls. Like the only two guys to really control Ferreira for like extended periods were Gregor and Benil Dariush, and even the Dariush fight. Now I thought the split was crazy. I thought it was clear Dariush, but it was a grueling fight, and it was ended up being a fairly close fight. He got him down and got 6 minutes of control, but we kept seeing Ferreira work up and then go forward. And I don't know, one, how Gamrot's going to deal with that. Number two, I think he is the more technical boxer, but I actually think Ferreira hits a good deal harder than he does. And, until we haven't really seen somebody kind of pressure Gamrot the way Ferreira is going to on the feet, he's going to go forward until he either runs out of gas or someone dies there. I just kind of trust Ferreira a bit more, like what he did to Taysimov, and then in particular the Khabibov fight, because while I rate Gamrot's game a bit more than Rustam Khabilov's, especially on the feet, I think they're probably similar as wrestlers, and Khabibov couldn't control him. And so I don't know how Gamrot's going to react to that adversity of someone coming forward and pumping the kind of output that Ferreira is going to here. I'm not huge on him because I do think it is one of those fights, like you mentioned. I do think Ferreira's on the downslope, and I do think Gamrot's on the upslope. And it could be one of these fights where we watch it and Gamrot just 30-27s him and just looks like the superior fighter at this point. It wouldn't shock me. But I did take a small poke at Ferreira just because the guy's fought so much better competition. He's more proven. I know he brings a good minute-winning style to the table where he's going to go forward. And I think he's live in scrambles to get dominant positions. And so with that being the case, it's really hard for me to think that he should be like a sizable dog here. On top of which, it's just like I get the cardio concerns, except like rewatch the Benny and Gregor fights. The pace of those fights, especially the Gregor fight, was
Yeah, I don't think the cardio thing is a valid argument here. I do think he has decent cardio, but I do think that it's going to come down to a full MMA game, and I think that Gamrot is just better at implementing it, or will be better at implementing it. And this will be a bit of his coming out party against a legitimate opponent, not a over the hill Jeremy
Yeah.
Stevens or a Scott Holtzman that we don't even know what the fuck he is anymore, right?
Well, and that's kind of like my big question, right? Because like all the stuff I see on tape from Gamrot looks like sexy as fuck, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like it looks real nice. He looks like a super talented prospect. It's really like, right now his best win to date is probably against the 145er in Jeremy Stevens or Norman Park. It's like, is he going to be able to implement that game plan against Carlos Diego Ferreira? I'm not that convinced. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm not convinced. Like, I wouldn't make Ferreira a big favorite, but I do think this line should be around evens personally. In terms of props, something I think is pretty interesting is Ferreira inside the distance. Like his style of fighting, he's a consummate finisher who is going to push a pace both on the feet and on the ground. And so, like, if Ferreira is winning this fight, I think there's a reasonable chance he finishes. So plus 500 seems a good bit wide to me. I like Ferreira to win inside the distance here. I like a small poke on him on the money line as well.
I like it. I like it. I'm glad that you're taking the Fajeda side here. I did want to make some. Did want to see somebody make a legitimate argue for him because I wanted to. Again, I'm a big Fortis Fajeda guy, but I just couldn't do it for this specific one. I actually might have a bet against him as well if I actually pull the trigger here.
I mean, honestly, if Gamrot walks through Ferreira, my opinion of him is going to go from like top 15 guy to probably top 5 guy. Like I think it would be that's my question: is can he make this work against the physical athlete like Ferreira?
Yeah, hands down the toughest test of his career. Easily toughest test of his career. Maybe if we got Fajeda 2 or 3 years ago, it might have been even tougher. But we'll see how it plays out here. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Another somewhat passing of the torch kind of fight. Staying on that type of theme, we got Rafael Assuncao, I believe at a ripe age of 38 years old, taking on Ricky Simón, who's really seeming to come into his own. Actually, Assuncao is 39 years old. Let me correct myself. Really getting up there in age. But the guy just hasn't really been that active as of late, right? If I'm not mistaken, since 2014 or 2015, he's only had 8 fights. It seems like a lot, but again, when you're used to fighters fighting 2 to 3 times a year, 8 times in the last 6 years is not that often. Obviously, he has a bit of a 1.5 year layoff here against a guy last time around where he went up against Cody Garbrandt. Close-ish fight. We saw obviously Cody have success in that first round. Assuncao really started to get back into the game in the second round, but then we obviously know that Cody Garbrandt found something under the cage and swung it at him and knocked him out. By the way, I love Brendan Fitzgerald. My favorite, one of my favorite non-John Anik guys, right? But when Cody Garbrandt fought that last time, was it Cody Garbrandt? I forgot who it was. But whenever Cody fought last time, that was this past weekend? Yeah, that was this past weekend. So yeah, it was Anakin, those guys. I forgot who it was, but they always say, "Oh, he's looking for something back there." He's every time he's up inside the cage, he's looking for something. Oh no, sorry, it was it was Brendan Fitzgerald. Cody Garbrandt against Rob Font.
That's right. Oh God.
Anytime he was up against the cage, he's just like he's looking for something back there. Is he gonna find something? Shut up. It was one time. I love you, Fitzy, but let's drop it now. Anyways, in regards to this fight, I think this is a great spot for Simón to come out there and get a win over a solid veteran in Rafael Assuncao. When I saw the odds, I was like, okay, maybe Assuncao's live here, right? But the guy's slowing down, man. The guy is really starting to slow down. Still quite durable. You know what I mean? I'll make that Cody Garbrandt knockout a little bit of an anomaly considering like the nature of it. You know what I mean? Like it was such a weird scenario how it went down. So I do think he can still take a punch here, but I do think that Simón's speed, his ability to mix it up, I do think he'll be able to land a takedown or two here to kind of sway the rounds. But rather than pay that minus 275, I actually took the decision prop here. I got it in around plus 115 for a unit stab here. I do think that he's the obvious side, but I'd be surprised if he actually gets Assuncao out of there. I do think that we'll see him play a full game. He might get behind on strikes a little bit, as I do think that Assuncao is a little bit more complete of a striker, but I do think that the obvious takedown attempts that are going to be incoming will allow Simón to kind of open up the rest of his game a little bit better. So I do like Simón here. Would rather play the decision prop than actually play the money line here, and that's exactly what I did. Not sure how much more I can really break down this fight. Assuncao is dangerous, but I do think he's too far over the hill at this point in time to deal with the upstart like Ricky Simón, who has as much potential as he does. So Simón by decision. What about you?
This is such a hard fight for me because on the one hand, like I love Ricky. He's like one of like I love backing Ricky because I think he's perpetually underrated. But now, because he brings a kind of style, you love to bet on. A lot of output on the feet, a lot of heavy turn attempts, a ton of takedowns, just a great minute winner. But now, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, this line probably would have been evens or a Assuncao a favorite, to be honest. And now we have Ricky Simón at minus 275. Maybe it's justified just because of Assuncao's age. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm sitting here and just like, unless Assuncao is really just dust and finished, I really don't see him just getting mauled by Simón. Like, who has ever done that to Assuncao? No one really. And it's not like, he fought Brian Caraway, he fought TJ Dillashaw. It's not like he hasn't fought guys who've tried to wrestle him, And on the feet, we've seen him fight better volume strikers than Ricky Simón and completely like neuter them. Like we saw Rob Font, him basically hold Font to 20 strikes in 3 rounds. And so I'm so torn because at 39, it's like this price could end up being short on the Simón side if he's just done and he just walks through Assuncao. But on the other hand, if he's not done, it could just be a case where Assuncao, cruises to a 30-27 decision. So like I'm tempted to take the shot on Assuncao. I don't know. I haven't done it just because like it is a lot. He did not look good against Garbrandt. I didn't think he looked great against Corey Sandhagen, to be completely honest, either, the fight before that. So I do think he is aging out, but I don't know. I'm thinking about it. In terms of props, I like goes the distance, to be honest. I think most of the finishing equity is on the Assuncao side, to be honest. So like if you want to play a no score cards at plus money, I think that's pretty nice, to be honest, for Assuncao. But I'd be a little like it's not like Assuncao reacts badly to shots. We haven't been seeing that. He got killed by an absolute nuke against Garbrandt.
Yeah.
I know Simón's not subbing him, and I'd be a little surprised to see Simón KO him here. So I do think if you like Simón, play Simón by decision or play go the distance. I kind of lean Assuncao on the money line. It might be a terrible take. It's really just hard to know where he's at, But yeah, I like goes the distance. I like Simón by decision. I like Assuncao no scorecards.
I'm glad MB brought this up because I wanted to bring it up myself. Has Assuncao fought anybody who has cardio and constantly goes for takedowns? The last guy that I can remember, Matthew Lopez, but no cardio, right? Lopez was able to land a takedown on him, but then after that seemed to gas. That was the downfall of Lopez's career, obviously, not being able to maintain a pace. But like outside of that, who else was there, right? Aljamain Sterling, Caraway, yeah, exactly. But like recently, within his last 5 to 6 fights, nobody, right?
No, not recently. Yeah.
So
and even Sterling isn't on the level in terms of wrestling that Simón is on.
So we can say this is easily the best wrestler that he's fought in the last 5, 6, 7 years. So another interesting aspect of that fight. All right. But yeah, I do like the fight goes to decision as well. I see that hanging around minus 165 at certain spots. Both guys quite durable. Again, Simón getting knocked out by Faber a couple fights ago. Again, I think that's one of those, his chin just didn't show up that night, but he's quite durable in his own right. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Amanda Lemos going up against Angela Hill, minus 300 on Lemos and plus 250 on Angela Hill. Another fight sticking with that trend of possible passing of the torch in a sense, right? Not saying Angela Hill is anything great, but she's been a veteran. She's been around the game for a long time. And now Lemos is the new shit on the block that really a lot of people are going towards, which is actually hilarious because Lemos is 34 years old, right? She doesn't have much time. She may be considered a prospect, but she doesn't have too much time in terms of really extracting as much success as she can out of her prime while she's in it. But I feel like this is one of those spots where we could see her potential on full display. Now, I was trying to find a reason to bet Angela Hill here, movement, output, that's kind of what she does best. But the fact that she was kind of losing those minutes and those rounds to Tisha Torres in a fight that I thought she probably should have been able to win, sticking on the outside, sticking and moving, she was getting beat to the punch. She was getting outworked. She was getting out volumed. And Tisha Torres did a really good job in that fight. I think Lemos might not be able to match the output here, but I think the damage is going to be the stuff that really sways the judges into her favor, especially if she's not able to get a finish here. I do think it will be a little bit more difficult for Lemos to find the finish, considering the movement and kind of the footwork of Angela Hill. I don't think she really keeps herself in a position to get hit hard enough or cleanly enough for her opponents to actually get put out. But again, she could potentially be on a decline of her own, and Lemos could really actually find that big blow at a certain point here. I'd be interested to see if Lemos decides to take this fight to the ground and use her jiu-jitsu, but that doesn't really seem to be her path to victory in the vast majority of her fights. She wants to go out there, she wants to lay her paws on you and try to put you out, but I don't think she's going to be able to get the finish here. I do actually like her, like this fight to go the distance, honestly. I'm seeing Lemos by decision currently sitting at plus 105. I was wishing actually for a wider number there. I thought they'd be more front loaded on the fact that she's just been finishing bitches recently, that they'd probably make the decision a little bit better. But they're wise to it. They know Hill is difficult to put away. I know Randa Marcos submitted her like 3 years ago, but again, Lemos not much of a it doesn't seem to be much of a BJJ threat in terms of taking the fight there and not really attacking your opponents from there. So yeah, I like Lemos here. I'll pump the brakes on the minus 300 for now. But if you want to play her by decision at plus 105, I don't think that's a bad spot. And the what are the overs at right now? Yeah, over 2.5 minus 245. Yeah, I'm good. No mas. I'm good. How are you feeling about this matchup?
So on the one hand, I do agree with you that I didn't think he'll look great against Torres. But on the other hand, I would honestly, I'm going to get chewed out for this, but like I would favor Torres outright against Amanda Lemos, to be honest with you. So like if this was Tecia Torres at plus 250 against Lemos, I'd be backing up the truck here, to be completely honest. I don't want to say Lemos is bad. Like I don't think she's bad or anything like that, but I do think the optics of her last two fights are kind of obscuring the rest of her career. Look, she was at 135 for the Leslie Smith spot fight. I don't put too much stock into it. She gassed out, but she was still getting outstruck on the feet by Leslie Smith, man. Like, that is a fucking bad look. And then she was a dog to Mizuki Inoue. And look, she won that fight on power, and no doubt she won it. But those rounds were pretty competitive. And, Mizuki had some success when she was able to find the pocket in those fights, and she was able to have a lot of success in the clinch in that fight. Look, I mean, I would rate Hill's game, her boxing and her clinch game, significantly better than Mizuki's. Given the success Mizuki had, I have to believe Hill can have the same success. I do think Lemos is a big hitter, obviously. I don't really think her knocking out Souza and Montserrat Ruiz are particularly meaningful outcomes, though, for this fight in terms of evaluating it. Hill went in there, went 15 minutes with Jessica Andrade, had no problem beating the shots, was not almost finished on the feet, anything like that. Look, she's going to come in there and she's going to throw a lot of output. She's going to take the fight to Lemos. My big concern on the Hill side of things is, I agree with you. Look, if I thought Hill could defend herself on the mat, I would be going big on her here. But I don't think that. And I think if Lemos is smart, she will take it to the mat, because I think she could potentially dominate the fight there and submit her. But she has not proactively wrestled that much. And as such, I'm not trusting her to come out and attempt 6-8 takedowns. I still think her cardio is pretty suspect. Like the end of the Mizuki fight, she looked pretty out of gas in that third round. And so I'm taking a Hill sprinkle here. Am I in love with it? No, I only bet one unit on the money line. But I can't get, I really think unless Lemos is hurting her bad on the feet, that it's going to be very, very competitive standing. I think Hill's output's a bit more reliable. I think even though Hill doesn't have the best cardio herself, I do think her cardio is a bit more reliable as well down the stretch. I don't know, man. It's really hard for me, unless you think Lemos KO is a high percentage outcome, or that she grapples aggressively is a high outcome. It's hard for me to get much past minus 150, minus 185 on Lemos here. I put one unit on Hill. I also like the Hill decision only prop here. It's plus 275. So if Hill gets finished, that's a push. I bet that. And the thinking is basically, I kind of think Hill is going to win the last round at a pretty good clip. And I kind of think if this goes 3 rounds, you're probably looking at a very, very close decision. And so plus 275, I'm happy to have a piece of that. Like I said, I'm not passionate about it. To be honest, the best case outcome here is probably Hill getting nuked and we actually getting Torres at a similar number. But yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people think that Lemos is the future and the best striker in the division. Personally, I'm not seeing that yet. I need to see more. I'm backing the more proven fighter.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as well. Another aspect of this fight that people can take is bet Hill live after round one, right? That's a
Yeah.
lot of the win equity for Lemos. She's getting that first round knockout, and obviously, she's gonna win the first round, or more than likely win the first round. So you get a better number on Hill there. Go ahead.
What I will say about betting live after a round. I went on my podcast last week and I gave out Juliana Pena. And I said, I'm not betting the money line. I'm going to bet her live after a round. And then I watched the first round and I was like, oh, that wasn't the pace I was looking for. And I didn't bet her live. And then I wanted to hang myself at the right after she finished her.
Oh, damn. That's a bad look. I know our guy Clint was pulling the trigger at plus 1100 going into that second round, but damn,
Great
man.
bet.
Yeah. I'm still reeling over that second round. That absolute fucking crazy second round.
I just can't believe how it happened, to be honest. Like, I thought like she could exhaust Nunes and finish her, but I thought it was going to be a lot of grappling. I didn't think she was just going to stand in the center and trade with her,
She just said, fuck it. Like, this is my opportunity. Let me try to take it from this bitch. And that's exactly what she did.
Broke her. Yeah.
That was crazy.
It was crazy.
Co-main event time. Wonder Boy is back. He's coming in at minus 220. He's going up against Bilal Muhammad, who's coming in at minus 180. Another spot where I was trying to make a case for the underdog, but I just can't do it, man. Obviously, I had some money on Wonder Boy when he went up against Gilbert Burns. It was very discouraging seeing him unable to stop those takedown attempts and then just kind of getting control from on top. Some of those takedown attempts looked very half-assed as well, which was even more discouraging. So once this matchup was announced, I was like, maybe Bilal, he'll be the obvious underdog here. Maybe he'll have some value in terms of being able to complete those takedowns and kind of replicate similar to what Gilbert Burns did. Nah, dog, not happening. Not happening. I think even Wonder Boy at 38, 39 years old should be able to do what Wonder Boy does. I think he'll move effectively enough. I think he'll be able to strike from the outside enough, keep Bilal at bay. And anytime Bilal does try to crash forward and try to close the distance and get some grappling going, I just think he's going to be met with some strikes that are going to keep him on the outside. Small cage obviously favors Bilal's game plan here. I just don't know how effective he will be in doing so. In terms of props, very fishy one in terms of figuring out which side to go with, because John, we talked about it a little bit before we went live here. Wonder Boy by decision, which currently sits at minus 125 now, actually. That seems to be the obvious path, but I do think that he could possibly open himself up to KO Bilal here at plus 333, considering the striking difference that we're going to get here. I actually bet Wonder Boy. So I bet Wonder Boy against Jeff Neal last year. I also sprinkled a little bit of that KO prop, as I thought eventually, within those 25 minutes, he would be able to find that knockout blow against Jeff Neal, who, I just didn't think was on Wonder Boy's level at that point in time. It didn't transpire, but now we have 50 minutes here against a guy that's more hittable, likes to move forward, doesn't mind getting hit, but that might eventually be his downfall and him getting knocked out here by a guy like Bilal Muhammad. So, interestingly enough, earlier this week, Wonder Boy was on Ariel's podcast talking about he wants to fight, be the oldest fighter inside the UFC. And I made this statement that I'm like, that's going to be very tough, especially when you're relying on speed and timing to be your main advantage over your opponents. The older you get, the less those things matter and less effective those things are. If you're a grappler like Randy Couture or something like that, yeah, you can fight later into your career if you can successfully grapple fuck these dudes, but that's not Wonder Boy's game. However, I think that this is a good stylistic matchup for him to go out there and give us a classic Wonder Boy performance. I'm staying away from it personally. You know what I mean? In case that age just does come creeping out of nowhere and Bilal does somehow just beat him up by, attacking his legs and kind of moving forward and putting some output on him. That's what's keeping me awake here. But I do think that we see a vintage Wonder Boy performance. I am going to lean more so with the decision around even money than the knockout here. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I think Bilal's in over his head here, to be completely honest. I had similar thoughts going into it where I was just like, Burns held him down. It's possible, Bilal will proactively grapple. It's possible he could get takedowns, hold him down, and win the fight. But rewatching the Burns fight, first of all, Burns is so much of a better athlete than Bilal. He's so much stronger. He's so much more explosive. And then when you look at the top game difference, like Burns' top game is elite. And rewatching it, like the fact that Burns wasn't comfortable enough on top to try to advance and was like struggling to hold him there and just was basically like, okay, I need to maintain position. Really, look, I didn't think Thompson has elite get-ups, but he showed enough that like I'd be pretty surprised if Bilal can hold him on the mat. Like it could happen, but dude, I mean, if Burns was struggling to advance position against him and was kind of prioritizing solidifying position there, I don't really believe Bilal can hold him there. On top of which, I think Burns is just a much better wrestler than Bilal is. So one, I don't think it's super likely Bilal has a ton of grappling success. Even if he lands a takedown or two, him getting more than a couple minutes of top time, I don't think is super likely. The other part of it is range. Look, I mean, watch the Leon Edwards fight. I rate Wonderboy striking a bit better than Edwards, and Bilal just looked lost on the outside. He just couldn't figure out how to get inside. Every time he came forward, he'd get clipped. You know, the same thing happened to him in the Jeff Neal fight. When he goes up against guys who can counter hard, who are better athletes than him and faster, he just kind of runs out of ideas fast. Because look, the bottom line is Bilal's gotten where he is because of fight IQ. He's very technical. He's very smart. But the bottom line is he's very athletically capped. You know, I don't really think he's going to have an easy time getting inside on Wonderboy. And I think if he does try to force his way inside, he's going to get hurt bad. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I might take a stab at Wonderboy. I honestly don't. I'd be very surprised if he just gets grapple fucked here. I really, really don't think that that's on the table. And I don't think Bilal winning minutes standing is on the table. So what are you left with? Maybe Bilal hurting him? I don't know. I'm not really buying it. But in terms of props, it's a tough one, man. Like you just said, because it's like, I think so much of like what is value on a prop perspective depends on how Bilal approaches this fight, right? If Bilal decides I'm going to win this fight, I'm going to come for him and I'm going to go for it, I think there's a pretty good chance Wonderboy knocks him out. He's so sharp on the counter. It's just he's going to get hurt at some point if he approaches the fight in that manner. On the other hand, though, if he approaches it like the Edwards fight, like that was looking like it was going to be a very low-paced 25-minute decision for Edwards in that fight. You know, and if that happens here, I could see Wonderboy winning a decision as well. So much like I don't really love a prop here because so much of it is dependent on what Bilal's approach is going to be. But I do think Wonderboy has him outclassed. If you put a gun to my head, I would take the shot on the plus 350 Thompson KO. I'm not super passionate about it, but I think Wonderboy handles him.
I like it. I like it. An interesting aspect of this fight was they only announced it like beginning of November. This is one of the more shorter notice fights for both of these guys. Again, they weren't scheduled to fight anybody else. It just came out of nowhere. They're like, let's throw you guys on the year-end card. So here they are a month later fighting. So yeah, that's an interesting part of this. But yeah, I absolutely agree with your analysis for this fight. All right. Main event time, and another time for me to remind you guys, shout out to the 100 live viewers that we have here on this Friday afternoon. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, and then obviously show my guy John some love as well. Follow him on Twitter at MMA Fox, and then obviously check out his podcast Wednesday nights 10 p.m. Eastern. The Club and Sub podcast link to their podcast is in the description below, so make sure you guys go show them some love. All right, John. Main event time, heavyweight slugfest. Once again, minus 145 for the rising Chris Daukaus, plus 125 for Derek Lewis. I'm not fading Derek Lewis anymore, man. I can't fucking do it. The only guy that I trust him to do so is Cyril Gane, and we're never getting that fight again. Chris Daukaus, obviously the more skilled fighter here. We can say that about every single Derek Lewis fight is his opponent is more than likely more skilled than him, but it's just that knockout power and his ability to just land it whenever he wants to usually causes his opponents to crumble, and I could absolutely see that happening here against Daukaus. I am going to pick the Daukaus side to win, though. I do think he'll move well enough here to stay away from the big shots of Derek. I do think that he'll try to play as safe as possible, work the body as much as possible, and then eventually start to open up in the second or third round when Derek Lewis starts to slow down. But man, one fucking punch, and that's all it takes for Derek Lewis. And I'm not reeling myself into playing minus 140 on a guy that I don't trust to completely stay away, like Cyril Gane would have or did actually back in August. I'm going to take Daukaus. I'm going to take Daukaus by KO. That seems to be the obvious play here. That is currently sitting at I can't find it. Here it is, Daukaus by KO plus 120. Not too bad. One thing I wouldn't mind, late Lewis round props, because we know that usually has some legs. Round 3 Lewis plus 1250, round 4 Lewis plus 2050, round 5 Lewis plus 3050. Could happen. Daukaus, we have question marks about his gas tank as well, especially with this newfound physique that he's been showcasing over his last couple of fights. It's pretty amazing actually seeing him go from like 256 in his UFC debut down to 227 2 fights ago, and now at about 230 pounds for his last fight. Seems to be lower 230s is where he really finds his sweet spot now, and that's probably best for him to do so for this fight against Derek Lewis as well. Speed, movement, stay away from the big bombs, as is any game plan against a guy like Derek Lewis. I'd be surprised to see Chris Daukaus try to engage in grappling here, try to take him down, because that's not really his game. But I do think that we'll see these guys slug it out. One of these guys are going to go down. The fight doesn't go to decision seems to be the obvious play. That's obviously up at -370. But after Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker, and obviously Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou, I'm not trusting heavy chalk on fights to go 25 minutes. You know what I mean? Again, we say they have 25 minutes to knock each other out, but when you have these big guys, their chance of knocking their opponent out starts to dwindle the longer a fight goes, compared to, a Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier, where if they go into a third or fourth round, they still have that finishing capability because they have the energy to do so. My side, Daukaus by KO, but I'm not touching this fight. I'm kicking back, watching this shit show occur before my eyes. How are you feeling this one?
Yeah, I lean the Lewis side of things, to be honest. I think it's impressive what Chris Daukaus has accomplished in the UFC thus far. No doubt about it. Obviously, he's got real power in his hands. He's a very slick boxer, good straight punches, good speed. One thing I've noticed with him, though, first of all, I actually go back and look at his entire career. The guy's never fought out of a second round in his career. Other thing is he tends to be a headhunter. And while I think Lewis is fairly fragile, he doesn't seem to be very fragile to head strikes. It's more if you go to the body and legs on him is where he has big issues, So I'm not really convinced that Daukaus just comes out here and starches him off the bat. Also, he's probably giving up about 50 pounds to Lewis in there, which is fairly significant. And Daukaus can be hit, man. We've seen him get hit by just about everybody he's fought. So far, he's held up under it okay, but, Lewis is a different level of power here that we're going to see. Look, I get it. Everybody hates Lewis. He tends to be a meme, but the reality is I think something that he doesn't get enough credit for is being a huge hitter. And the reality is at heavyweight, having the ability to knock out people with the weight rate he does is a skill in and of itself. He may not be technical. He may not be, the most durable guy ever, but the reality is the guy's got 20 fights in the UFC and 75% and won 75% of his fights. Like, that's pretty substantial, man. This guy's only losing to the best in the world. Maybe Daukaus is in that tier. I am not so sold on it, though, to be honest. And like I said, he's only been I agree with you on the late round props here, just because Daukaus has never been out of round two. He gassed out against Zhu Yanwu and got finished in round two of that fight. Yeah. Zhu Yanwu, ladies and gentlemen, lost to Justin Ledet. Okay, at heavyweight. I don't know, because I feel more or less the same as you, I guess, except the reverse. It's like I do think Daukaus has the tools to look like the favorite, obviously, but I kind of trust Lewis. I trust his pedigree. I trust his power a bit more. I know Daukaus can get hit. And I don't think he's ever been hit by anybody that's going to hit like Lewis will. Whether I probably won't play the Lewis money line because plus 120, I mean, whatever. But Lewis KO plus 175, I mean, I don't think he's going to win a decision. So I'm pretty happy to take the stab there. I don't think it's a mismatch or anything like that. But I do think it's a pretty titanic step up. And we don't really have a lot of data about Daukaus' chin or how he'll handle going late into a fight. So, yeah, I'm on Lewis here.
I remember that Zhu and Yanwu fight and being completely face palming myself, just being I can't believe he lost to that guy. But again, I feel like he's completely transformed himself since that fight. Yes. Again, physically, you can see it. Obviously, he's doing this thing full time now. I believe he had to leave his police job. But very much looking forward to seeing if this fight does get extended into the later rounds, how it goes down. All right, let's get into our 3 best prop bets. Obviously, I'd like to share who I'm going to be bringing on for the Ultimate Weigh-In Show, which actually kicks off in about 3.5 hours. So I'm going to be taking in these weigh-ins and then jumping on the live stream here with my guy, Nick Kalikas from MMA Oddsbreaker. You guys obviously know him from the UFC On the Line show from Fight Pass as well. He does that show with James Krause, I believe, on their own channel now. Love Nick Kalikas, one of my favorite guys in the industry. I believe he's one of the main guys over there at Circus Sports in Vegas as well. When I went out there in August, he gave me a little bit of a behind-the-scenes tour of what their operations look like, so that was pretty cool. And I couldn't think of a better person to end the year off with than a sharp dude like Nick Kalikas, who, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the first ever odds makers for MMA as well. This guy, I remember the first time I talked to this guy, we were on the phone for about 4 hours just talking about the history of MMA and MMA betting, and this guy has a wealth of knowledge, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how he breaks down this card with me. And again, that goes down in about 3.5 hours, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to go over what went down at the weigh-ins, and then obviously give you guys our final predictions. All right, let's get to the 3 best prop bets for each of us. I will kick things off as I always do. The first one that I like, Tafa Hunsucker, won't start round 2, -125. I don't mind that line at all. I know Tafa has been a little bit more patient in his last couple of fights, considering he got starched by Jorgen De Castro a couple of fights ago, but Hunsucker is not going to allow him to be patient. He's going to be in his face. He's either going to be looking for a takedown and eventually smashing him on the mat or finding a submission, or Tafa counters him properly here and puts Hunsucker's lights out. So I like that fight won't start round 2. Next up, I like Ewell via decision at +330. Again, I think if he stays disciplined, keeps his distance, manages to use that jab effectively as he does more often than not, I think that this is this fight to win at +330. I love it as well. And then lastly, I got Ricky Simon via decision at +130. Personally, I think the line that I got was +115. Still like that spot here. Assuncao, even though he did get knocked out in his last fight by Cody Garbrandt, historically he's a very durable fighter, and that knockout was, again, I want to call it an anomaly considering the circumstances surrounding that knockout and how it actually transpired. I'd be surprised if Simone finishes him, but I think that Simone will stay active enough, maybe mix in a couple takedowns, and then take home a decision victory for hopefully the biggest win of his UFC career. So there you guys go. I did want to actually just talk about our last prop bets. Well, again, I don't want to pat myself on the back. 3-0 on my last prop bets. I had Oliveira Poirier 1-star round 4 -170, Cruz via decision +185, and then Costa Kelly 1-star round 3 at -150. Cody went 2-1 on props. He had the Cruz fight go to decision. He had the Kelly over 1.5, which cashes by like a minute and a half. So shout out to him for there. But then he loses on the Ige decision, and unfortunately, my guy John had a very rough night, picking fights to go to a decision that did not go to a decision. But I know that my guy John will bounce back this week because he has some pretty damn good props that I think that you guys are going to want to hear about. So John, there you go. First one up.
Yeah, first one up, I got Eubanks via decision. Bottom line, I just think she's the more skilled fighter everywhere. Eubanks should be able to get this down and dominate on the mat. She's not a proactive finisher from there, though. Prioritizes control. I think the decision line should be closer to evens, and we're getting +150. I love that. Next up, I got Hill decision only +275. Basically means if there's a finish, this is a push. I think if this card fight goes to the cards, you're looking at a pretty sweaty fight that's probably 50-50. +275, I'm happy to take the stab. If you don't have access to it, I don't mind a poke at Hill decision +500 either, to be honest. And last up, I got Lewis via KO. Like I just said, I think Daukaus is there to get hit. There's a lot of questions about his cardio. I don't think he throws to the body a lot. So I think these guys are going to exchange shots to the head. And I trust Lewis a lot more in that kind of fight. Lewis is a huge hitter. I think plus the KO line being 55 cents worse than the money line is kind of crazy. So yeah, Lewis by KO.
Love it. I love it. And unfortunately, I do not have any props from Cody because I just waited too long to reach out to him. And yeah, he hasn't posted on Twitter in like 5 days, so I'm sure the guy's just chilling and doing his own thing here. But as you guys obviously know, he usually posts his stuff on Twitter. So if you guys want to see what his favorite props are, make sure you guys go check him out at CJ Saftik on Twitter. John, on the back end here, obviously, I'd like to give you the platform here to say anything that you want on the back end, and then I'll wrap this bitch up.
Yeah, Wednesday nights. I mean, we had our last show of the year, but Wednesday nights, Club and Sub podcast, 10 p.m. Eastern. You can check me out on Twitter at MMA Fox. If you ever have any questions or anything about what I'm thinking, feel free to reach out. Hit me with a DM, and I'll reach out to you. But yeah, we'll be back next year, first card of the year. It was a pretty profitable year. The last couple months could have been better, but you know what? We're going to jump into next year and crush it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, this is the last week of the UFC fights for the year. Reminder, me and Clint are going to be starting our show, Deadlock Podcast. January 5th is the first show, January 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you guys tune in for that one. But yeah, John, appreciate you taking out the time, as always, to do the show. Good luck on your best this weekend, as well as the 100 live viewers as well. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe on the way out. And then obviously show my guy John some love as well with his Club and Sub Podcast. Link to his channel is in the description below. Show my man some love. And then obviously check out his podcast Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, Club and Sub Podcast. All right. Appreciate everybody checking out the show. Eubanks by decision. Let's fucking go. Good luck on your bets. And I'll see you guys at 4:30 p.m. Eastern with Nick Kalikas to do the breakdowns one last time with you guys. Peace out.